Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has presented a U.S.-backed cabinet plan to fully reoccupy Gaza, and the directive includes military operations in areas believed to hold Hamas captives. Of course, we got to have Hamas. They got to be in the region in order for us to reoccupy. Now, granted, Hamas did show a hostage that they still have in captivity. So this is giving Israel just cause to reoccupy Gaza. I believe that Hamas, they did show at least one frail body, unfortunately, frail body Israeli that they still hold captive. But this is giving Benjamin Netanyahu, the IDF, the state of Israel, just cause to reoccupy Gaza. Now, do not forget that Gaza is in the country of Palestine. So I don't know what the Palestine government, I don't even know if they have a military, but we're going to break it down for you guys, because the IDF chief of staff has reported opposing this, prompting that Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly demand resignation if he can't deliver compliance. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, the chief of staff says that he opposed reoccupying Gaza. And Benjamin Netanyahu, in some regards, sounds like President Trump. If you don't do it, then you will resign. You will get fired. And you have former security figures, humanitarian groups, hostage families warned that the move could backfire and endanger hostages and isolate Israel further on the world stage. If you try to go in guns blazing to reoccupy Gaza, they're stating that the people who are still held in captivity by Hamas, that their lives would be further threatened. And that Hamas just may just, in some regards, chop off their heads, eliminate them because of this. Now, this is one of the reasons why we have this terrorist group, Hamas, in the region, because some critics are stating, and some reports are stating, it's because of the occupying of Gaza and other areas in Palestine. That doesn't give Hamas just cause to harm innocent people, but then Hamas will state that Israel has harmed innocent Palestinians and they are the freedom fighters. Yeah, this can really get dark, family. This can really get dark really quickly. And I just really think that if we pull back the curtain and expose the raw, unfiltered truth about one of the most complex and controversial and devastatingly misunderstood geopolitical entanglements in modern history, we have to start with Palestine, which is a land, a people, and a history that predates modern conflict. Now, contrary to what sanitized textbooks or legacy mass media and cable news would tell you, Palestine, also known as Philistine, it was not some barren land that people make it out to be. This wasn't some barren wasteland waiting to be civilized. It was home to cities, families, schools, farms, industries, and mosques. And Palestinians lived, thrived, and governed in this space through fragmented under Ottoman and then British control. And that the modern state of Palestine as a political entity was declared in 1988 by the Palestinian Liberation Organization, claiming the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem as its sovereign territory. But here's the catch that I think, a lot of people are not understanding how people are really looking at this. They never truly control the land. Not completely, not militarily, not economically, and certainly not politically. Their authority has been a mirage, a paper-thin veil of autonomy granted through the Oslo Accords of the 1990s, where the Palestinian Authority was allowed to govern in a fragmented, weakened capacity, always under the shadow of Israeli occupation. So today, the Palestinian people are split in two. You have the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority, crippled by bureaucracy and international dependency. And you have Gaza that's ruled by Hamas, which is an isolated enclave under siege. And there is no unified leadership, no centralized military, no control of borders. They can't control their own airspace. They don't even have their own currency. They are in that particular era, they are a state in name only, politically, in some regards, neutered, economically, strangled, and militarily occupied. This is the reason why it's so easy for Israel to do what they're doing. Palestine is not a unified state. You have the West Bank by the Palestinian Authority, and you have Gaza by a terrorist group, Hamas, as what, the so-called Westerners label them as. And now when you enter Israel, a state that was constructed and born in 1948 from the United Nations partition plan, like, you know what? Palestine, even though we know the area and region of Palestine, we know they have the West Bank and Gaza, which make up the region of Palestine, the statehood of Palestine. We're going to do a partition plan, which was originally designed to split mandatory Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. Like, you know what? Within this area of Palestine, we're going to make this a Jewish state, Israel, and then you guys can kind of have the rest when it comes to, you guys being Arabic and et cetera. That's what they did. The United Nations decided. Whoever was representing Palestine, maybe they wasn't at the table. Again, government and organization is everything. Unification and organization is everything. And I think that's where Palestine failed at. They had no unifying body. They never created a country military to even to stand in the way. But when Arab states rejected the plan, sensing injustice and a lack of equity, because again, a lot of these Arab states are like, no, we don't agree to that. A war erupted from this, ladies and gentlemen. And Israel didn't just survive, it expanded, it gained more land than the plan allocated. It displaced over 700,000 Palestinians in an event known as Nabuk or Nakba. I don't know how to pronounce this, Nakba. And this is how they expanded the state of Israel, by doing so, again, by war. And this is how land has always been gained, by war. But again, I always ask myself this question. If a lot of the Arab states within the region were against this, then why in the heck didn't they step in and form a unified Arab state military to oppose this Israeli takeover of that particular region? You know why. I know why. Not only because of the United Nations, because of the powerful Western countries that have been backing Israel, especially the one and only United States of America. Because as we see it today, Palestine before 1948 was beautiful. It was natural, so to speak, as people will say. But now we have France as well as the UK trying to identify and back a Palestinian statehood. But how they're going to do that if Palestine is not unified and organized and have a real government in place? This is the reason why this is very easy for Israel to do. I just wonder why, because Nakba, Nakba, they also call it the catastrophe. And from that point forward, Israel began building one of the most powerful military machines in the world, backed by billions of dollars in U.S. aid, cutting edge surveillance, and diplomatic immunity on the global stage. So how does such a tiny country like Israel, smaller than the state of New Jersey, put into perspective, they're smaller than the state of New Jersey, hold the power to not only govern itself, but dominate and occupy another people? Since the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel has maintained military control over the West Bank and previously Gaza, placing checkpoints, building settlements, constructing barriers, and monitoring every move of the Palestinian population, even after it withdrew troops and settlers from Gaza in 2005. Israel never truly left. It has maintained a brutal air, land, and sea blockade, controlling everything from food and medicine to construction materials. Gaza became the world's largest open air prison, where 2 million people are packed in with no exit, no autonomy, and no future. And now here we are in 2025. We stand on the edge of something much darker. This is darker than we could ever imagine, ladies and gentlemen. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu embroiled in political chaos, corruption scandals, and desperate of his entangled hold of power. He has proposed something that has shocked even seasoned Israeli generals, a full reoccupation of the Gaza Strip. Now, I've been telling you guys this for months, that he has been planning to reoccupy Gaza. Even President Trump talked about reoccupying Gaza by American hands and making the area of Gaza Strip beachfront property. And we're not talking about just temporary inclusions, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about a permanent, boots on the ground military presence, Israeli control over every street, every neighborhood, every breath taken inside of Gaza will be controlled by the Israeli Defense Force. Now, this isn't the first time that Israel has re-entered occupied territory. We've seen it in the West Bank in 2002, but this proposed action, in my regard, is unprecedented in modern times. It will reverse nearly two decades of disengagement. This will definitely just wipe away what they have progressed to be. It will plunge the region into permanent warfare, and it will all be done under the guise of scrutiny, even as the IDF commanders themselves warn such a move could get hostages killed, drain resources, and trap Israel in a never-ending quagmire. And the more I look at this, the more I wish that Palestine was a country that was recognized, that was organized, that established a government, that had a seat in the UN. Because without a unifying body in an area as large as Palestine, this is the reason why the UN came up with the partition plan and gave Israel, land in the region, and then Israel expanded that land within Palestine, because you're not organized, you're not together. And I'm not blaming Palestine for all the atrocities that the IDF, by the way of this terrorist act of Hamas, have done, and how many of hundreds, if not thousands of people have been harmed and killed, and the starvation that we're now seeing, not only as it pertains to children, but also to the Palestinian people. So I ask you, what gives Israel the power to do this? What makes the world sit in silence as Gaza burns, as children die, as international law is trampled? This is a fractured Palestinian resistance and the political will to do what others won't. And the U.S., we may express concern. The EU may wring its hands, and the UN may release strongly worded statements. But let's be very, very clear. Nothing stops Israel except consequence, and consequence have been absent. This is not just a military story. It's not just about borders or politics or who fired first. This is about occupation, subjugation, and control. We've seen this time and time again throughout history. This is not about occupation. This is not about subjugation. It's not just about control. It's about all of the above, and most importantly, it's about power. It's about a land where one people live under military law and another live as free citizens on the same soil. It's about apartheid. It's about surveillance. It's about suppression disguised as security. And if this reoccupation happens, if Israel rolls in its tanks into Gaza permanently, uproots what's left of the Palestinian infrastructure in that area, and declares full control, then the final mass will fall. The world will have to decide, is this about self-defense or is this about domination? Because the line between the two have already been crossed, and history is watching, and history is being repeated. I really think that the only thing that the UK and France can do, as they say that they will recognize the Palestinian statehood, is that they're going to have to do something that colonizing countries have never done before? Well, in some aspects, colonizing countries have done this, but they're going to have to do it in a way that benefits the people of Palestine. Meaning that not just picking people to be part of the political class in Palestine that will do business with Western powers, but pick political officials in Palestine and form a formal government that can be recognized, but true Palestinians that will not only start to build a military force and security and govern social economic so that people can start to work and have a sense of life within the region. They're going to have to pick really intelligent, smart, loving people, which colonizers really never do. And I'm not stating that in these regards that France and the UK are colonizers. I'm just going based upon their history, not their current state. And in some regards, you can still call them colonizing countries because, again, you still have France, you still have military security forces in Africa that are occupying militarily resources in Africa, but a lot of African countries are standing up and pushing back. So France is fleeing Africa because they don't want war, because how would that look on the world stage? But as I look at the history of Palestine, the history of Israel, the partition plan that the UN imposed and gave land to Israel, that is because Palestine has never been officially a country, officially a state. Because the one thing that every country is recognized by, in order for you to be a country, you have to have some sort of national security force and or military. You don't have to have an Air Force. You don't have to have a Navy. You don't have to have a Coast Guard, but you need an army. You at least need ground troops. And Palestine really doesn't have that. Their strongest military force, unfortunately, is Hamas, which have done terroristic acts against innocent people in the state of Israel, which is kind of given, initially, it gave Israel the just cause to invade the Gaza Strip. But now we have, 50,000 people have perished. Innocent people have perished because of this. So if I dive deeper into this story, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, in order for the UK and France to really step in, which will be opposing President Trump. He's totally against recognizing Palestine as a statehood, even though there's people who call themselves Palestinians. And I don't mean onesies and twosies or hundreds or 1,000. We're talking about millions of people recognize themselves as Palestinians. Guess who else needs to step in? Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. All of these powerful, rich Middle Eastern states need to help Palestine form a government and the military in order to stop this reoccupation. Because I can tell you this, Western powers, we don't want to go to war with the Middle East as a unified body. We don't want to do that. It'd be all out war. That would be what we keep leaning towards. We thinking that the next World War III is going to be between Russia and China and all these other countries. No, the way this is turning out, folks, it won't be this against Iran, Russia, India. I've also thought about Iran getting into bed with Palestine. Then that would be a full-fledged war. So Iran needs to stay exactly where Iran is, as well as Iraq, because of our history of war. But when it comes to countries we've been very neutral with, Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Dubai, all these very rich, powerful countries that has influential worldwide influence, they definitely need to step in cooperation with the UK and France for the best possible outcome for the people in Palestine. I don't see no other way, ladies and gentlemen, because if they don't step in and apply pressure and start to negotiate, there will be no more Palestine, but there'll always be an Israel, and it will become very, very large. And unfortunately, for a very long time, the United States of America had been supporting this in one way or another.